Well, hey there, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Speaking of. Today we'll be speaking of IG as an instrument of change. My name's Steve Weissman. I'm the InfoGov guy, and welcome back. The latest in our ongoing series. So the concept here that we're talking about today is that while we often view IG as part of a strategy to change the way our organizations operate, in fact, it can be an instrument of change all by itself. So I'm not going to do it justice. So let's turn to our guests today to put the flesh on the bone. They are Angela Watt, a certified information professional coming to us from our neighbor to the north, which is to say Canada, not New Hampshire. I'm in Boston. And also Ann Snyder, principal at IG Standard. She comes without need of introduction, so I'm not going to give her one. And can you give us the backstory here so I don't kill the concept before it's fully birthed?
Okay. So this is actually, so Angela's not only a professional colleague, she's also a friend, and we were noodling on some different IG topics like we do. And we were talking about, change management and how that's really one of the more difficult challenges that we face in terms of getting, IG work done. And she said something that I thought was a really great idea because it completely shifted my thinking on something. I was like, and it made me sort of think about instances where this had actually happened in work that I'd done. She said that information, like effective information management, effective IG can actually be used to influence culture. So very often we go on sort of like fun on into change management, and she suggested we could maybe go at it a slightly different way. So is that giving fair take on that, Angela? Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, that's a fair take. It's a good way to describe it. I think one of the
Oh, then
issues
we're done.
is that we. Oh, good, done.
Sorry, go ahead.
Why, Steve? I was on a roll.
Still
So, frequently, corporations look at change management as something separate and
not.
information management as separate. But what I believe is that not only can a corporation's information management practices kind of give a test of the corporate culture, because it gives you a lot of clues, but once you understand what that looks like, it can actually change the culture and shift the culture to a more proactive and culture that can work for the company instead of be two separate things. So
Mhm.
that's kind of the idea that we were talking about. So yeah.
And just to pick up a thread on what you're saying there, like, can you just dig in a little deeper on the idea that your IM and your IG practices can be like a test of what the state of your culture is?
Yeah, definitely. When you're looking at a corporate culture, if you kind of analyze where the information is and how it's
Mhm,
managed, it can tell the culture of do the employees trust that they can access information? Can they
mhm,
trust that what they're looking at is credible and accurate? Or are they
mhm,
creating silos? So something as simple
mhm,
as employees in different departments have their own data sets and stores of information. Well,
mhm,
why?
mhm,
Why do they feel they need to have that?
mhm,
Because the ultimate goal is that single source of truth. So that would tell you that your employees don't necessarily trust it, that they can
mhm,
access what they need to do their job.
mhm,
So that is one indication of a lack of trust in an organization that could be a deeper issue that could be addressed. So
mhm,
if you can take that aspect of it, maybe they don't trust the information, maybe they have trust in the organization, that
mhm,
perhaps if you have that start to create that environment with the information, then you can shift that culture.
mhm.
So,
Okay. And what about, so, I mean, one of the things we always talk about is siloing. So like you just mentioned siloing of your information. Have you seen that be indicative of actual physical, or not, like cultural siloing that's happening as well? Not just the trust information and the trust in the information itself, but siloing culturally.
yeah, definitely. In
Mhm,
government, I've seen different departments that'll have the exact same information, but they
mhm,
operate the way that they even operate is in siloed um, areas that don't talk to each other very often, and they create their work on their own and they only send it out when they have it. It's a
Mhm.
massive segregation of all the information that
Mhm.
they're required to keep those copies
Mhm.
and keep everything because they just don't talk outside of it. So the way that they're managing and creating and using the information is siloed, and you can see that even in the corporation with the different areas.
Mhm.
Now it's interesting because when Ann first told me about what you guys had chatted about, first, yay. It's a
Mhm.
very interesting way to take these things and kind of turn them on their heads,
Mhm.
which I'm always in favor of. But I began to think of it in a slightly different way. It would run in parallel, I think, in that, yes, I think you're right that the way information is handled can be reflective of how people view the faith that they have in their organization. Let's put it that
Can
way.
you say I'm right again?
You're right. You're left.
Go on.
Um,
Now with feeling,
I
Steve.
could get it in writing if you like. That's.
I would love that.
But I'm thinking too. A lot of the clients that I served over the years, it's not even as nefarious as all that. They just do it out of habit because when they
Mhm.
joined the company, this is how it was done. And so they got told, do it this way. And I asked them why, and they go, well, this is what they told me on my first day. Um, the, so the other part of that is a lot of people, including me, when I think of change management, I think of this as a whole big thing, capital T thing,
Mhm.
which is really tough. But it hadn't occurred to me to take IG and use it as a fulcrum
Mhm.
to change the organization. You know, it's something a lot more contained definitionally. So it's like we're
Mhm.
not trying to reinvent your life, but we just want you to do this. And the net effect can be largely the same because it ends
Mhm.
up, if not breaking down all the silos, at least putting a pretty big dent in them.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So
And then it
like
becomes a
both.
tool that you don't have to sell necessarily. It's
Mhm.
shifting the culture to you're shifting the processes instead of bringing in this idea of you must classify your information, you must manage it end to end, which ultimately, and I hate to say this, not a lot of people in outside of the IM profession actually that's not important to them. They want to be
Mhm.
able to do their job and do it well. So
Mhm.
this is kind of a way to attack that is
Mhm.
help them with their processes.
See, I'm glad I explained that you're in Canada because we don't have processes here.
We even sometimes document them, Steve.
Oh.
Okay, and keep it family friendly.
No, but I like. Okay, so it's one of those things. Like when you said this, it was one of those things I absolutely have seen it happen. Where people ask me, how do you get buy-in and stuff like that, and the buy-in that I've gotten, the most successful buy-in has not been it's great to have a top-down sponsor if you need budget and executive support. We always talk about that, but the best buy-in that I've gotten for programs and work that I've done has always come from the sort of side or the ground up, where I've helped someone with a process or process even in America, and just something like that, like all joking aside, like they've had some kind of a glitch. So I see an IM problem or an IG problem where they're saving documents offline. That's indicative of some cultural problems, but also why are they doing that? It also could be some just technical issues. But if I make a little change there, help them with that little eddy in the stream for them, I get a phone call from them 2 weeks later, or referral to another group that's having a problem. And it's just this sort of back end way of making a little incremental change, but it has a building effect, like a snowball effect over time, I think. And it's been much more effective from my perspective than going head on against the resistance. So is that what you're seeing too? Does that
Definitely. And it's those little ins and actually digging a little deeper into the whys, into what people are
Mhm.
doing. Because all it takes is this one tiny little shift in process sometimes that will affect how the entire organization can operate. So sometimes they don't even know. You don't know what you don't know. So sometimes they don't understand that there's 6 different departments that use the same information. So using it also as an opportunity to educate, hey, did you know that this department uses it this way? And then mapping out the entire workflow of the organization to help them see that it isn't a silo, it's an ecosystem. And this is how you can contribute to that ecosystem.
All right, let's conclude, because believe it or not, we've already talked through our time. But we can still continue the conversation. Certainly, all of you watching, I always tell you, keep those cards and letters coming, and I really do mean it. You can find us all, certainly comments on the YouTube page, but LinkedIn may be perhaps a good place to continue this. Let me conclude with just one final question. Where did this notion come from? I mean, did you experience a particular bit of awfulness where you suddenly said, hey, you know what? We're doing this backwards. Or is it just an accumulation of, there must be a better way?
Well, really what it comes from is that I think that I've seen our industry go about selling information management from a tool aspect, not a we can help it. And what I've seen for decades is that organizations they just don't have that buy-in because they don't care about classification. They want their employees to work better. And with the whole global pandemic that's happened the past couple of years, it's really expanded everything out, that people didn't have access, that they weren't working in that ecosystem. So that's kind of where I kind of thought up this idea. Well, you can actually influence culture if you're allowing for the access to the information. So
Very, very cool. Last comment, Anne?
No, I think this is, I think that, this is one of those things that when Angela said it, I was like, oh, it's like, it's simple and captures something. And it's one of those things of that seems to make perfect sense. That seems so obvious, except that it wasn't kind of like, putting wheels on suitcases. We had the wheel, we had luggage, and nobody seemed to figure that out until sometime in the 80s, I think it was. And so I think it's a really great idea. I'm interested to hear how this gets developed over time as you dig into this, Angela. So thanks for being with us.
Indeed.
Thank
and
you.
I just have to point
Perhaps
out,
we're our own silo.
we are. Ooh. And I just have to point out, to continue, and your metaphor, we went from bags without wheels to bags with wheels to nobody's going anywhere anyway. So I just thought I'd leave it there. Anyway, many, many thanks to the two of you. Really fascinating. Those of you watching, thanks for tuning in. As always, let's keep this conversation going. It's a good one.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Anne.